She was the third of 6 children. Her parents were devout Roman Catholics, very religious people. They expected her to get an education, yourself. If you were her, you're struggling along to support your husband through medical school, and you're thinking there's an end to this coming pretty soon. And then he says, no, actually, I'm changing careers. But, I mean, it was Harvard Law School, so at least there was that, you know. So she continued to support them. When he finished, he got himself a job in San Diego, and off they went. They got a house in La Jolla, California, which is a very affluent neighborhood. And after a little while, he established himself. He opened his own law firm, or his own private practice. And he was making big, big, big money. And finally, Betty could stop working and reap some of the benefits. They had a beautiful house, they had beautiful cars, they had fancy clothes, they went on lavish vacations, they joined a country club, and they started hanging out with all of the high society attorneys and their wives. So now she was not working, you know, outside the house per se, but don't forget, she has 4 children, okay? And I don't think I have to tell anyone how hard it is to take care of 4 children, okay? I mean, it's rewarding and everything, but it's a lot of work. She was going to all the soccer games, helping out with, you know, Boy Scouts, PTA, I mean, you name it. She was very, very busy. And Dan was never around. He was always working or hanging out with his, you know, lawyer friends or whatever. But he was like an absent father and husband. And she felt like a single mother of 4. Then, in 1983, a new woman was hired in the building where Dan worked. She was 21. Her name was Linda Kolkina. She was a beautiful blonde-haired woman, and he was really into her. She had just started working as a receptionist, and her previous employment was as a flight attendant. She didn't have any law experience or knowledge, and she couldn't even type. But he hired her as his legal assistant because he needed some help, you know, with all the he was also having an affair with her. Now, Betty kind of suspected that this was happening because she had overheard her husband saying how good looking Linda was when they were at a party. And she asked him a few times, and he denied okay, you know? But he came out screaming, as you would, and I would, and everyone would, right? You got a brand new, beautiful house, and your soon to be ex-wife, drives her car through the door. So, anyway, he called the police, and I mean, they'd been around, they knew this couple, obviously. But this time was pretty much the worst yet, and plus 2 years for illegal use of a firearm. She had her first parole hearing in 2010. At this hearing, she showed no remorse and still insisted that she had done the right thing, and it wasn't her fault. And the same thing happened at the next 2 parole hearings. She will not be eligible for another parole hearing again until 2032. And she considers herself to be a political prisoner at this point because she feels that she should have gotten out on parole. And she is now 74 and still in prison. And that is the case. So what do you think? I mean, there's a lot here, right? I wish we knew what her baseline was, you know? Like, I wish we knew what her state of mind was, you know, back when she first met Dan. That would help us to understand if she was always, you know, unstable, or if this just became a thing because of, you know, the life she led with Dan. I mean, I have to say, she absolutely should not have killed Dan and Linda. Like, that is not the answer. It does seem like he didn't treat her very well, and he was obviously not the greatest husband or father, to say the least, but he didn't deserve to die. I also do not like the way he totally screwed her legally. I mean, this is such a clear, it is so clear that he owes his career to her in a way, you know? I mean, yeah, he did all the education and all the hard work and all that, but he wanted to have a family. He wanted a wife. He wanted children. And she made that possible. And she supported him and their family in the early years while he was getting his education. So how can he just turn around and basically give her almost nothing? It's just like he has so much. Why does he have to be like that? Or was it just that he was feeling like she was treating him so terribly after he left that he was so angry he didn't want to give her anything? You know, was it just revenge, or was it greed, you know? Of course, she was not a mentally well person, but I don't think she was, you know, criminally insane. Like, she knew what she was doing. Although, once again, I have to say, what did she think was going to be the result of this? I mean, she had 3 minor children, and she knew she was taking the life of their father. I'm sad.